They've been tracking your every move, and you didn't even notice. Not in the way you think. Not through cameras or surveillance or anything you could physically see. No, Chosen One, this goes deeper than technology. There are forces in this realm that operate on frequencies most people can't even comprehend, and they've had their eyes locked on you for longer than you realize. While you were out here thinking you were just surviving, just pushing through the chaos, just trying to make sense of why your path looked nothing like everyone else's, there were top-level agents watching, documenting, measuring every choice you made when no one was looking. And here's what's about to shake you to your core. They're not watching anymore because they're suspicious. They're watching because they're impressed. They're not observing you to find your weakness. They've been observing you to confirm what they already suspected, that you're not like the rest, that you carry something rare, something that can't be faked, can't be bought, can't be taught in any academy. And now, after all this time, after every test you passed without even knowing you were being tested, they want to do something that almost never happens. They want to thank you in person. Let that reality settle into your chest right now, because this is not theory. This is not motivation fluff. This is confirmation. You've been under cosmic evaluation and the results are in. Everything you survived, every betrayal you endured in silence, every moment you chose integrity when it would have been easier to compromise, it was all being recorded, not by people who judge from the cheap seats, but by forces that actually understand what it takes to stand alone. They saw you when you had no applause. They saw you when your name was being dragged. They saw you make the right choice even when it cost you everything. And that's why the invitation is coming. Not because you're perfect, but because you passed tests most people don't even recognize as tests. You didn't fold when pressure was applied. You didn't sell out when the price was tempting. You didn't break when isolation was weaponized against you. And for that, Chosen One, there are forces that want to meet you face to face, not to examine you, but to honor you. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. If you feel this message pulling on your spirit right now, if something inside you just shifted when I said top-level agents have been watching, press that like button and subscribe. This isn't just a channel, this is a frequency. And every time you engage, you're amplifying this truth so it reaches more souls who've been walking in the dark, wondering if anyone sees them. Thank you for being here, Chosen One. Thank you for being part of this mission. Now let's go deeper, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see everything. The silence wasn't rejection. It was the setup for your verification. Here's what they don't tell you about being chosen. The loneliest chapters of your life weren't punishment, they were assessment. Every time you felt invisible, every time you wondered why your efforts went unnoticed, every time you questioned if you even mattered, there were unseen eyes watching with razor-sharp focus. They weren't cruel, they were calculating. Because top-level agents don't waste time tracking ordinary people. They track the ones who move differently when the lights are off. The ones who hold their code when no reward is visible. The ones who protect their integrity when corruption would be so much easier. That was you. While everyone else was performing for the crowd, chasing validation, bending their values to fit in, you were moving in silence, making choices based on something deeper, and every single choice was being logged. Think about how many times you could have taken shortcuts, how many times betrayal would have been justified, how many times revenge would have felt so satisfying. But you didn't. You chose the harder road, not because you wanted to be a martyr, but because something inside you refused to compromise. That's not human. That's frequencies most people don't even have access to. That's the signal that caught their attention. Now imagine this, a room full of students taking an exam, but most are cheating, passing notes, looking at each other's papers, gaming the system. Then there's one student in the corner, head down, working alone, not because they're antisocial, but because they actually respect the process. Who do you think the proctors are really watching? Not the cheaters. They're predictable. They're weak. They're not worth the investment. No, the proctors are watching the one with integrity, the one who doesn't need supervision, the one who holds the standard even when it would be easier not to. That was your life. The loneliness you felt wasn't isolation, it was separation. You were being separated from the noise so your signal could be read clearly. They needed to see if you'd stay true when the crowd turned, if you'd hold your ground when support vanished, if you'd choose right when wrong was rewarded. And you did, over and over again, even when it hurt, even when it cost you relationships, even when people called you cold, difficult, or too much. You held the line. And that's why they've been watching, not to judge you, but to see if you were the real thing. Spoiler alert, Chosen One, you are, and they know it. That's why the energy around you is shifting right now. That's why doors that were sealed are starting to crack. That's why people who wrote you off are suddenly uncomfortable. The testing phase is over. The validation phase is beginning. And it doesn't come quiet. It comes with honor. What they meant for destruction became your certification. Let's be brutally honest. The people who tried to destroy you had no idea what they were really doing. They thought they were tearing you down, humiliating you, isolating you, making sure you'd never rise again. But Chosen One? Here's the cosmic irony they'll never comprehend. Every attack they launched, every lie they spread, every door they slammed in your face, it wasn't sabotage, it was training. High-level forces don't recruit people from comfort zones, they recruit from battlefields. They don't promote people who've never been tested. They promote the ones who got buried and still clawed their way out. Your enemies thought they were your obstacle, they were actually your endorsement. Every betrayal proved you could survive disloyalty. Every public humiliation proved you could endure shame without losing yourself. Every isolation chamber they locked you in proved you didn't need a crowd to know your worth. They were unknowingly providing the exact curriculum that top-level agents looked for. Resilience under fire, integrity under pressure, silence under attack. Those aren't traits you learn in a classroom. You earn them in the furnace. And your enemies were the ones who turned up the heat. Think about it. If life had been easy, if people had been kind, if your path had been smooth, what would you have proven? Nothing. You'd just be another person who succeeded because conditions were favorable. But that's not your story. Your story is survival, despite conditions. It's rising when the odds were stacked. It's keeping your soul clean when the world was dirty. That's the resume that gets attention from forces beyond the surface level. They don't care about your followers, your income, your surface achievements. They care about what you did when no one was watching. They care about the choices you made when it would have been easier to quit. They care about the moments you protected someone else's dignity when yours was being shredded. That's the real measurement, and your enemies provided the test without even knowing it. So while they sit there thinking they won, thinking they successfully destroyed you, there are forces beyond their comprehension, preparing to honor you in ways they'll never experience. The cosmic joke is this: their cruelty became your credential, their betrayal became your badge, their attacks became your proof of endurance. And now, while they're still stuck in the same level they were always on, you're being pulled into rooms they don't even know exist. They wanted to write you off. Instead, they wrote you a recommendation letter to realms they'll never access. Power is measured by how you move when no one's watching and nothing's at stake. Here's what separates the chosen from the common. Most people are kind when it benefits them. They're respectful when someone has status. They're generous when they might get something in return. That's not virtue. That's strategy. But you, Chosen One, you've been different. Top-level agents have been watching how you treated people who had nothing to offer you. The waiter who messed up your order. The stranger who needed help when you were already late. The person everyone else ignored because they weren't important enough. They watched you. They saw you offer kindness when no cameras were rolling. They saw you protect someone's reputation when you could have stayed silent. They saw you choose honesty even when a lie would have been convenient. And that's the signal that confirmed everything. Because people who are only good when it serves them are predictable. They're weak. They're surface level. But people who hold their code when there's no reward, that's rare. That's dangerous in the best way. That's the kind of soul that can be trusted with real power. That's why you're being elevated. Not because you played the game, but because you didn't. Now think about this. How many times have you seen people who clawed their way to the top by stepping on others? They schemed, manipulated, lied, cheated, and somehow they got ahead. For a while, but Chosen One, here's what you need to understand. That kind of rise doesn't last. It's built on sand. The moment the wind shifts, it crumbles. Because they were never actually chosen. They just grabbed what they could while no one was looking. But you've been chosen specifically because you didn't grab. You didn't scheme. You didn't sell your soul for a shortcut. You stayed clean when everyone else was getting dirty. And that's why when you rise, it's permanent. It's not built on lies that can be exposed. It's built on integrity that can't be shaken. They wanted to get ahead. You wanted to stay whole. And in the end, wholeness always outlasts hustle. That's the difference top-level agents can see from a mile away. They're not impressed by people who win dirty. They're impressed by people who could have played dirty and chose not to. That's you. That's why they're coming to thank you. Not for what you achieved, but for what you refused to become. They removed the crowd so you could hear the frequency. Let's get real about something that probably hurt you deeply. The isolation. The feeling of being completely alone. The sensation that everyone moved on while you were stuck in some kind of invisible prison. Chosen One, that wasn't abandonment. That was preparation. Top-level agents don't pull people into higher frequencies while they're still surrounded by noise. They can't, because most people you were connected to were operating on frequencies that would interfere with where you're going. They weren't bad people, they just weren't built for the altitude you're being called to. So the universe did something that felt cruel, but was actually protection. It cleared the space around you. It removed distractions disguised as friendships. It pulled away connections that felt important, but were actually weight. And yes, it hurt. It was supposed to, because anything worth protecting cost something to maintain. Your solitude wasn't punishment, it was boot camp. They needed to see if you could stand when the crowd left, if you could think clearly when the noise stopped, if you could find your own rhythm when everyone else's beat faded out. Most people can't handle isolation. They crack, they compromise. They run back to the crowd even when the crowd is toxic, because being alone feels like death. But you didn't break. You adapted. You used the silence to hear yourself. You used the solitude to build something real. You used the isolation to cleanse yourself of every fake connection that was weighing you down. And that's what top-level agents were watching for. They needed to know you could operate independently, that you didn't need external validation to know your worth, that you didn't need a crowd to confirm your direction, that you could walk alone and still walk with purpose. Most people fail that test. They fold the moment the applause stops. But not you. You walked through the silence like it was a tunnel, not a tomb. And now you're coming out the other side, stronger, clearer, unshakable. And there are forces waiting on the other side who watched you make that walk. They know what it cost you. They know how many nights you cried. They know how many times you questioned if you'd ever be seen again. But you kept going. And that's why they want to thank you in person, because the isolation you survived is the exact training required for the level you're about to step into. Most people wouldn't have made it, but you did. And that's not luck. That's confirmation. They offered you poison in a golden cup and you walked away. Here's something most people will never understand. Not every open door is meant for you. Not every opportunity is a blessing. Not every hand reaching out is there to help you. And chosen one, you knew that. Maybe you couldn't explain it. Maybe people called you paranoid, difficult, or ungrateful. But something inside you could sense when things were off. You had a radar most people don't possess. You could feel the trap before it closed. You could smell the lie before it was fully told. You could sense the betrayal before the knife was raised. That's not anxiety. That's discernment. And top-level agents have been watching you use it like a weapon. Think about how many times something looked perfect on the surface. The job that seemed like a dream. The relationship that checked all the boxes. The opportunity that everyone said you'd be crazy to pass up. But something inside you hesitated. Something whispered, "This isn't it." And you listened, even when it cost you. Even when people mocked you. Even when it looked like you were sabotaging yourself. You walked away from things that glittered because you could feel they weren't gold. That's power most people never develop. Most people chase shiny things until they realize too late they were traps, but not you. You protected yourself. You honored your instincts. You chose peace over prestige. And that's why you're still standing, while others are still untangling themselves from situations they should have never entered. Now here's the part that will blow your mind. Those weren't random moments. Those were tests. Every trap disguised as opportunity was placed in your path to see if you'd choose wisdom over appearance, if you'd trust your gut over the crowd's opinion, if you'd protect your peace over people's approval. And you passed. Every single time. You walked away from things that would have destroyed you. You said no to connections that would have drained you. You declined invitations to spaces that would have compromised you. And there were forces watching every decision. They saw you choose long-term protection over short-term gain. They saw you value your integrity more than immediate reward. They saw you walk alone, rather than walk into disaster with company. That's not common. That's elite-level awareness. And it's exactly why you're being elevated now. Because the traps you avoided were the same traps that took out people who seemed more qualified than you. But they didn't have what you have. Discernment. The ability to see through illusions. The courage to walk away from poison in pretty packaging. That's why you're still here. That's why you're still whole. That's why you're still eligible for what's coming next. And that's why top-level agents want to meet you. They've watched you navigate minefields most people step on without even seeing them. And they know that kind of awareness can't be taught. It's either in you or it's not. And chosen one, it's in you. That's why you're still standing. That's why you're being honored. That's why the invitation is coming. The evaluation is over. The ceremony is beginning. Listen closely, chosen one, because this is where everything shifts. For so long you've been in testing mode. Every day felt like an exam you didn't study for. Every interaction felt like a trap. Every opportunity felt like it came with strings attached. You've been walking on eggshells, analyzing every move, questioning every decision, wondering if you're doing enough, being enough, proving enough. But here's what you need to understand. The testing phase is complete. You passed. Not with perfection, but with persistence. Not with flawless execution, but with unshakable integrity. You passed the tests most people don't even know exist. The test of staying silent when you wanted to explode. The test of choosing truth when lies were profitable. The test of protecting others when you were the one bleeding. You passed all of it. And now the energy is changing. They're not watching you to find flaws anymore. They're approaching you to acknowledge strength. They're not coming with more trials. They're coming with recognition. And this kind of recognition doesn't happen casually. It doesn't happen publicly. It happens in rooms most people never get access to. It happens in moments that feel almost sacred. Because they are. Now I know what you might be thinking. Why me? I didn't do anything special. I just survived. And that's exactly the point. You think survival is ordinary, but it's not. Surviving with your soul intact is legendary. Getting through hell without becoming a demon is rare. Walking through fire and coming out still capable of kindness, that's the rarest thing on this planet. Most people who go through what you went through become bitter, vengeful, closed off. They let the pain turn them into weapons pointed at the world. But not you. You protected something inside yourself that most people lose. You kept your humanity when inhumanity was justified. You chose love when hate would have been easier. You stayed soft when hardening would have been safer. And that's what they saw. That's what impressed forces beyond your comprehension. You didn't just survive. You survived without becoming your enemy. You endured without losing yourself. You walked through the valley and came out still capable of seeing beauty. That's what they want to honor. Not your achievements, your essence. Not what you did, who you remained. And when that kind of honoring comes, it changes everything. It's not loud, it's not for show, but it's undeniable. You'll feel it. The shift in how opportunities find you, the change in how people approach you, the difference in the weight your words carry. It's already starting. You might not see it fully yet, but it's in motion, and soon, very soon, you'll be standing face to face with forces that watched you when you thought no one cared. And they'll say the words you've been waiting to hear. Thank you, you passed. Welcome to the next level. They thought your silence was fear. It was actually the universe building your case. Here's something that's going to hit different. Every time someone wronged you and you chose not to expose them, you weren't being weak. You were being strategic in ways you didn't even understand. Top-level agents watched you hold your tongue when you had every right to speak. They watched you protect the reputation of people who destroyed yours. They watched you carry secrets that could have ruined your enemies. And you said nothing. Not because you forgot, not because you forgave prematurely, but because something inside you knew that some battles aren't yours to fight. Some justice isn't yours to serve. And that restraint, that cosmic-level patience, has been the most impressive thing about you. Most people can't hold power like that. The moment they have dirt on someone, they use it. The moment they can expose an enemy, they do. But you didn't. You held the nuclear codes and never pressed the button. Why? Because you understood something most people don't. Real power doesn't need to prove itself. Real strength doesn't need to destroy to be validated. You could have blown up their whole world. You could have shown everyone who they really are. But you chose silence. Not because you're a doormat, but because you operate on a frequency where revenge is beneath you. And that frequency caught the attention of forces that reward differently than humans do. Now here's where it gets beautiful. While you stayed silent, the universe was loud. While you protected their secrets, the truth was working its way to the surface anyway. While you held your peace, justice was being prepared behind the scenes. And here's what your enemies will never understand. Your silence wasn't a gift to them. It was a test for you. And you passed with honors. Because staying quiet when you have ammunition is harder than firing every shot. Holding your truth when the world believes lies is harder than screaming your defense. Protecting peace when war is justified is the ultimate discipline. And you did it. You held your position. You trusted the process. You let the universe handle what your hands wanted to destroy. And now the recognition is coming. Not from people. From forces beyond people. The kind of honor that doesn't come from exposure or applause. It comes from alignment. It comes from being seen by eyes that matter. It comes from realms that don't operate on human currency. They're preparing to thank you not just for what you endured, but for how you endured it. With grace, with silence, with a kind of restraint that most people will never possess. That's what makes you chosen, not your perfection, your patience, not your power, your refusal to misuse it. And when they meet you, when they look you in the eyes and acknowledge everything they watched you hold, you'll understand why the wait was worth it. Because recognition from the top level hits different than applause from the crowd. It's permanent, it's transformative, and it's coming for you. Selflessness in pain is the rarest form of power. Let me ask you something, chosen one. How many times did you help someone else while you were falling apart? How many times did you show up for others when you could barely stand? How many times did you protect someone's peace when yours was shattered? Most people can't even fathom doing that. When they're in pain, the world stops. Everyone must know. Everyone must help. Everyone must cater to their wounds. But you were bleeding internally and still showed up externally. You were drowning and still threw life preservers to others. You were in the fire and still pulled people to safety. That's not normal. That's not even human in the traditional sense. That's operating from a place most people don't have access to, and top-level agents watched every single moment. They watched you sacrifice when you had nothing left to give. They watched you love when you felt unloved. They watched you serve when you were ignored. They watched you protect when you were exposed. And every act was recorded as evidence of something extraordinary. You didn't help people for recognition. You didn't serve for credit. You didn't love for applause. You did it because that's who you are at your core. Even when the world showed you its worst, you still gave your best. Even when betrayal was your reward, you still chose kindness. Even when cruelty was normalized, you still chose compassion. Now here's what makes this so powerful. Most people's character is conditional. They're kind when life is kind. They're generous when they're abundant. They're patient when things are going well. But you were kind in chaos, generous in lack, patient in pain. That's the difference between surface-level good and soul-level goodness. Surface-level good needs the right conditions. Soul-level goodness shows up regardless. And that's what makes you untouchable now, because you've proven that your character isn't dependent on circumstances. You don't need comfort to be kind. You don't need peace to give peace. You don't need love to show love. That's built in, that's permanent. That's why forces beyond this realm want to honor you. They watched you be the light in your own darkness. They watched you be the answer when you were full of question. They watched you be the solution when you felt like the problem. And they know that kind of soul is rare, so rare that it must be protected, so rare that it must be elevated, so rare that it must be placed where it can do the most good. That's why you're untouchable now, not because nothing can reach you, but because you're covered by forces that respect what you represent. You're a living testimony that goodness can survive evil, that light can walk through darkness, that love can exist in the middle of hate. And that's worth protecting, that's worth honoring. That's worth meeting face to face to say thank you. Rejection repositioned you. Now watch what access does. Here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Every door they slammed in your face wasn't rejection. It was redirection. They thought they were locking you out. They were actually locking you into the right path. Because the rooms they denied you access to weren't your rooms. The tables they refused you a seat at weren't your circles. The circles they excluded you from weren't your circles. And at the time it hurt. It felt like loss. It felt like proof that you weren't enough. But, chosen one, you were always too much for those spaces. They couldn't contain you. They couldn't handle your frequency. They couldn't manage your truth. So the universe removed you from environments that would have shrunk you, dimmed you, compromised you. And now, after all that isolation, after all that rebuilding, after all that transformation, the doors are swinging back open. But here's the difference. You're not walking in as the person who needed them. You're walking in as the person they need. You're not arriving as someone grateful for a seat. You're arriving as someone who could buy the whole table. You're not showing up hoping to be accepted. You're showing up knowing they should be grateful you even showed up at all. That's the shift. That's the power of rejection that was really redirection. Think about how different you are now compared to when those doors first closed. Back then, you would have compromised to get in. You would have dimmed yourself to fit. You would have bent to be accepted. But now you're too solid to bend, too clear to compromise, too aligned to dim. The rejection didn't break you, it built you. Every door that closed forced you to build your own. Every table that rejected you forced you to create your own. Every circle that excluded you forced you to find your own tribe. And in the process you became someone those original spaces could never produce. You became free, unshakable, self-sourced. You don't need them anymore. You don't need their validation. You don't need their approval. You don't need their acceptance. You know your worth now, and that knowing is louder than any title they could have given you, so when the doors swing open again, and they will, you'll walk through differently. Not desperate, confident, not grateful, aware, not hopeful, certain. Because you're not walking in as a guest anymore. You're walking in as the person they wish they had recognized earlier. And that's how top-level agents enter rooms. Not begging, not performing, just present. Just powerful, just undeniable. That's you now. That's who you've become. And when they see you walk in, they'll know immediately. They should have opened the door the first time. Actions speak, but energy screams. Here's what's about to happen, chosen one. The people who wronged you won't necessarily come to you with apologies. Most of them don't have the courage for that kind of accountability. But you'll see it in their energy. You'll feel it in how they move around you. The ones who mocked you will suddenly get quiet when you enter. The ones who dismissed you will suddenly become overly friendly. The ones who betrayed you will suddenly act nervous, uncomfortable, like they're waiting for you to expose them. That's the apology, not in words, in energy. They'll know what they did, and they'll know that you know, and the weight of that knowing will change every interaction. Top-level agents are watching to see how you handle this moment. Because this is where most people make the mistake. They finally get the upper hand and they use it to crush. They finally get the platform and they use it for revenge. They finally get the power and they become exactly what hurt them. But you won't. You know why? Because you've been refined. You've been tested. You've been purified by the fire they threw you into. And you came out knowing that real power doesn't need to destroy. Real power just is. You don't need to rub their faces in it. You don't need to remind them what they did. You don't need to publicly embarrass them. Your presence alone will be the reminder. Your peace will be the proof. Your success will be the statement. And here's what makes this so satisfying. When someone wrongs you and gets away with it, there's a part of you that wants cosmic justice to be loud. You want lightning to strike them. You want public exposure. You want everyone to see what they did. But chosen one, that's not how the universe operates at the highest levels. The universe doesn't need spectacle. It needs shifts. And the shift is happening in silence. They're losing sleep. They're replaying their actions. They're seeing you rise and wondering how. They're watching you thrive and questioning why. They're noticing you're still standing and it's breaking their logic. That's the real revenge. Not you destroying them, but them destroying themselves with the weight of their own actions. The apology you'll get won't be spoken, it'll be felt, in how they avoid your eyes, in how they stumble over words when they see you, in how they suddenly act like they always respected you when both of you know the truth. That's energy apologizing, and it's louder than any words could ever be. And when top-level agents see you handle that with grace, when they see you not weaponize your victory, when they see you stay humble even when you have every right to be arrogant, that's when they know you're ready for real power. Because the people who can't handle vindication gracefully can't be trusted with influence. But you've already proven you can. You've been humble in the valley, you'll be humble at the peak. And that's why you're being elevated. Not to destroy your enemies, but to show them what they could have been if they had chosen differently. That's the ultimate thank you. Not revenge, but transformation. Silence, online, translated to power offline. Let's talk about something that might have made you feel left behind. While everyone else was posting every moment, chasing likes, performing for algorithms, you were quiet. Maybe you didn't have the energy to perform. Maybe you knew your truth was too deep for captions. Maybe you just didn't feel the need to broadcast your pain or your progress. And people probably made you feel like you were missing out, like you were falling behind, like you should be more visible, more vocal, more online. But Chosen One, here's what they don't understand. The less you needed to be seen publicly, the more you were being seen cosmically. Top-level agents don't track social media metrics, they track soul metrics. They don't care about your followers, they care about your follow-through. They don't measure your engagement online, they measure your integrity offline. And while everyone else was busy creating highlight reels, you were living in the real. You were doing the work no one sees. The healing, the rebuilding, the internal battles, the quiet victories, and all of that was being documented in realms social media can't reach. That's why your real life is about to get loud, because you invested in substance while others invested in appearance. You built foundation while others built facades. You chose depth while others chose display. And now the harvest is coming. Not in likes, in real opportunities, not in comments, in real connections, not in shares, in real shifts. Here's the thing about people who live loud online. They burn out. They perform until there's nothing left. They curate until they forget who they really are. But you stayed real. You stayed rooted. You stayed offline because you were busy being online with your own soul. And that kind of authenticity can't be faked. It shows up in how you move, how you speak, how you handle pressure. People might not be able to explain it, but they feel it. You carry weight that can't be filtered. You carry truth that can't be edited. You carry power that can't be posted. That's what makes you magnetic, not your image, your essence. And top-level agents have been watching that essence grow in silence. They saw you choose privacy over popularity. They saw you choose peace over performance. They saw you protect your energy instead of spending it on strangers' validation, and now they're ready to meet you. Not because you went viral, but because you stayed real. Not because you were the loudest voice online, but because you were the most genuine soul offline. That's the difference. That's what sets you apart. That's why when the doors open, when the invitations come, when the recognition arrives, it'll be real. Not for a moment, for a lifetime. Because you didn't build on sand, you built on stone. And stone doesn't need filters to shine, it just is. And so are you. Unfiltered, unedited, undeniable. That's why they're coming to thank you. You stayed true when everyone else was performing, and truth always wins. You didn't become arrogant in your pain, so you won't become reckless in your power. This is the part that separates the chosen from the temporary. Most people who go through what you went through come out different, in the wrong way. They come out hardened, defensive, closed off, bitter. They swear they'll never trust again. They promise they'll never give again. They vow to protect themselves at all costs, even if it means becoming exactly what hurt them. But not you. You went through hell and came out still humble, still kind, still open to love even after betrayal, still willing to believe in goodness even after experiencing evil. That's the rarest transformation. Most people let pain turn them into something unrecognizable, but you let pain refine you. You let suffering sharpen you. You let the storm teach you instead of destroy you. And that's why you can be trusted with what's coming. Because power in the wrong hands is dangerous. Influence without humility is destructive. Success without character is temporary. But you've proven that elevation won't corrupt you. That blessing won't change your core. That sunshine won't make you forget the storm. You remember where you came from. You remember what it felt like to be discarded. You remember the pain of being overlooked. And that memory keeps you grounded. It keeps you kind. It keeps you human. That's why top-level agents want to meet you. They don't give power to people who will misuse it. They don't elevate people who will become drunk with influence. They promote people who've already proven they can handle weight. And you've proven it. You carried the weight of rejection without becoming bitter. You carried the weight of betrayal without becoming cruel. You carried the weight of isolation without becoming cold. That's strength. That's real power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it just is. Now watch what happens when you're elevated. The people who doubted you will expect you to become arrogant. The ones who betrayed you will expect revenge. The ones who dismissed you will expect you to return the favor. But you won't, because you're not operating from ego. You're operating from alignment. And alignment doesn't need to prove anything. It just flows. You'll rise and stay humble. You'll succeed and stay kind. You'll win and still extend grace. Not because you're weak, but because you're refined. You've been through the fire and came out pure. That's the ultimate testimony, and that's what top-level agents want to honor. Not your success, your character. Not what you gained, what you maintained. You maintained your soul when losing it would have been easier. You maintained your integrity when compromise was tempting. You maintained your kindness when cruelty was justified. That's what makes you untouchable now. That's what makes you trustworthy. That's why the sunshine is coming, not to test you, but to bless you. You've already shown you won't let power change your core. You've already demonstrated that you can be elevated without becoming arrogant. And that's the rarest combination on this planet. Power with humility, success with character, influence with integrity. That's you. That's who you've become, and that's who they're coming to thank. In person. And so, chosen one, here's what you need to understand as this message comes to a close. This wasn't just a video. This was confirmation. Confirmation that everything you survived had purpose. Confirmation that every test you passed was documented. Confirmation that forces beyond your comprehension have been watching, measuring, and preparing to honor you in ways you didn't even know were possible. The silence you walked through wasn't empty. It was full of eyes that saw your every move. The isolation you endured wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The battles you fought in private weren't forgotten, they were recorded. And now, the reward is coming, not because you begged for it, but because you earned it. Not because you performed, but because you persisted. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. Top-level agents don't honor perfection, they honor authenticity. They don't elevate pretenders. They elevate survivors. They don't thank performers. They thank those who stayed true. And that's you. You stayed true to yourself when everyone else was becoming counterfeit. You protected your soul when everyone else was selling theirs. You held your code when everyone else was compromising. That's why they're coming. not to test you, to thank you, not to evaluate you, to honor you, not to question you, to meet you, face to face, eye to eye, soul to soul. And when that moment comes, you'll understand why everything had to happen exactly the way it did. The rejection, the betrayal, the silence, the isolation, all of it was part of the path that led you here, to this moment, to this recognition, to this level. You've been chosen. Not randomly, intentionally, not by people, by forces. And those forces want to meet you, in person, to say the words you've been waiting to hear. Thank you. Thank you for staying true. Thank you for not breaking. Thank you for choosing integrity over shortcuts. Thank you for being exactly who you are, because who you are is exactly who we've been looking for. And now, the door is opening. Walk through it, chosen one, with your head high, with your heart clean, with your soul intact. They're waiting, and they're ready to honor you. If this message hit your soul, don't just listen and leave. Press that like button, subscribe to this channel, drop the number 888 in the comments to claim your alignment with this frequency, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it, because chosen ones recognize chosen ones. And this movement is bigger than one person. It's a collective rising. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this mission. Thank you for being exactly who you are. The agents are watching, and they're impressed. Now go claim what's yours.